The Utah Jazz play at home tonight against the Portland Trail Blazers. They struggle on defense for 3 quarters, but the fourth quarter they completely turn it around and almost make an amazing comeback. Let's talk about it.
Jazz Smack, NBA and Utah Jazz basketball.
Okay, this was, I'm sure that a lot of people weren't happy with this game for the first 3 quarters, but the fourth quarter, completely different. And a lot of that credit, I give a lot of that credit, the numbers bear this out, certainly, for Elijah and Cody remaining ready. And when those two guys got in the games, their plus minuses are off the charts really good, considering they both played 11 minutes and 56 seconds, both of them. Played the exact number of minutes and seconds. And the numbers with them on the court were drastically different. And his aggressiveness on the defensive end and Cody's length on the defensive end, who also played hard on the defensive end, those guys on the perimeter defense, that made a big impact, a big positive impact. Now, we know that the Jazz have made defense the primary emphasis in this early season, trying to get the guys to play more, focused defense, more team defense, better perimeter defense. But for the first 3 quarters tonight, that was a struggle. It was a struggle overall, but things turned around in the fourth, and that's the positive. Take something from that positives, take some positives from that fourth quarter, apply it to the next game and games after that, and try and replicate that. And that's what the team needs to do. So you can't just dwell on the negatives of the first 3 quarters. I could see Hardy over on the sideline, and he was very frustrated with the way it was going. I mean, Walt had some real big defensive lapses. Other guys on the perimeter had some big defensive lapses. But give credit to Cody and Elijah for really changing things in that fourth quarter. And I think the Jazz can draw some positives from this because, in that fourth quarter, they never gave up. They didn't hang their heads. They never said they were out of the game. And quite frankly, they had every opportunity in the world to win this game at the end. And I think that's what there needs to be growth, and you need to take when positives do arise, you try and emphasize those, and that's what you need to take from this game particularly.
Yeah, I like that point, and I was actually going to talk about the last 5 minutes because I thought it was interesting, and I pulled up some stats we can get to later about Harkless, about his G League, etc. But Hardy over the last 3 years has kind of preached, play hard and pass, and reward those that do that. And this is an example of 2 guys came in, played hard, played team ball, and he rewarded them. And honestly, that should be something that we applaud, because I think it makes players accountable. It makes players try and fit into the system. So I really like that. I was really happy at the end of the game. Honestly, they played a good game. They hung in there. As you said, they didn't hang their heads. It's a good cohesive team. I was really pleased. And I'll tell you one other 2 things, and maybe you're going to get to it. I watch like Kevin Love over on the sideline. I love having Kevin Love on the team. Honestly, I feel bad for Kyle Anderson because, I feel like, he should, and I think they'll find some place for Kyle Anderson. But, a couple of the veterans we picked up are just like fantastic. I mean, they're sitting in the huddles, they're giving other players advice, and that's what you want out of those guys. And I couldn't be more pleased with Kevin Love. And I would have never guessed that. Honestly, when they got Kevin Love, like, okay, when are they going to trade him off? I am so happy he's on the team now, because I think that they do have a group of guys that like each other, want to play together. And we have to be happy about that, whether they win or lose. And we have to give credit to Will for bringing them together, and honestly, he has done that. And I give him all the credit in the world for that.
Yeah, I think Kevin. I mean, we've talked about this previously, but yeah, he was a terrific addition. And Kevin, I think he might be at the point of his career where he sees his role on whichever team he's on the court role, as a very small one. Now, maybe Kevin actually wants to pursue something on the coaching side moving forward. I mean, he has championship pedigree. He's been around a long time. He's had a lot of success on bad teams, especially when he's with Minnesota, leading the league in rebounding. Huge rebound numbers. I can't remember exactly what it was, like 15, 16, 17 rebounds a game. It was massive rebound numbers. But, he went to Cleveland. He won a title, but his role shifted with the Cavs. And then, he went to Miami, and again, a smaller role than what he had in Minnesota, but he learned to fit in. He kind of changed up his game, became more of a perimeter three-point shooter, but he's a really good influence on the young guys. So I think that so far this year, I don't think he's played a minute of game action in the regular season yet, but he's certainly a positive influence on that bench, and he's really positive with the guys, trying to encourage the guys. You can see him talking to the guys. I mean, Utah's a good place for him because he spent a lot of time in the offseason here in Park City in a number of years. He has friends on this team. He was a good friend of Lauri when Lauri was on the Cavs. He and Lauri both on the Cavs together. I mean, he's a good fit. And I think he's the most important of those offseason acquisitions from like a bench role and a locker room role. I think he's the guy. So yeah, it's all positive. Watching him on the sideline is very encouraging because, there are some guys who would hang their head and be unhappy with their on court role. And Kevin, he certainly hasn't displayed anything like that. I mean, it seems like he's actually really pleased with the role that he's playing, role that he has with the team at this point.
Yeah, I agree. And let me throw out the other one that is completely different. But you may be, before we get off Kevin, you may be dead right about Kevin. He may see, look, I'm 37 years old. Is he 37? 36, something like that.
Yeah.
But 37 years old. My next thing is coaching. I don't want to leave this game. I can make a lot of money in coaching, as we've seen. And so I want to learn to do that. And so he's sucking that up. And the other guy that we've had on our team that we both just think he's fantastic is good old Mike Conley, right? When he was on Memphis, you're like, okay, he's the competition. But then he came on the team and he was such a positive influence. And now I've watched Mike throughout his career. Wherever he goes, everybody just thinks he's the greatest guy around, right? I mean, he has that skill. And I never realized that about Kevin. And Kevin's not Mike Conley. Kevin's really got a skill. But the guy on the court that we picked up that had a great addition, and I wasn't happy about this trade at all because you traded away my favorite player in Colin Sexton. But Nurk has been great. His passing, his screening has been great. And we just need him working with Walker and Flip to teach him that. So on the court, I mean, he's playing backup minutes. That's what we want him to do. But he's been great on the court. So, like 2 of the 3 acquisitions have just been great. And like I said, I think Slow-Mo is still a quality player that he should be going somewhere. So I'm still rooting for him. But like he hasn't got a minute yet this year either. And so, his impact on the team, I would say, is less than those 2. Although I think his attitude's been good too, from what I've seen.
Yeah, I think all the veteran offseason acquisitions that can help in the locker room thus far have been really positive. I mean, Nurkic has been really positive on the court, and you can see him talking to the guys too. I mean, Nurkic isn't a fantastic defensive player, but offensively, he can really help the team, and he can try to kind of guide the younger guys to improvement. And I think he's willing to do that. Thus far, he's showed his willingness to do that. And you can't just have everything coming from the coaches. The Jazz have a ton of coaches, but having some guys who can mentor them on the court is also a major factor, and that's how you improve. And we all know this is a needed development year, and the guys need to improve, and that both comes in practice and in games. So those guys have been really positive thus far.
What did you think of the last 5 minutes? Like when we were catching up, Keontae had a couple of layups, nice layups, blew some people, got over them. Give him credit for those. What did you think about rotations, how they played in the last? Like, what's your commentary on like the last 5-6 minutes of the game?
Well, yeah, I was fine with it. I mean, as long as he never removed Cody and Elijah from the game, and I think those guys were really the most important two factors for getting into guys on the perimeter and making it difficult for player movement, making it difficult for ball movement. I mean, it was those two guys had a huge impact, and that's what I want to see translate to the other players, like all the other players, not just the starting guards, but anybody who's guarding somebody on the perimeter. Now, one of the areas of strength that the Jazz need to have an advantage in is that offensive rebounding number. And I always come back and harp on this. The way the Jazz are playing defense right now, with all the switching and everything, we all know, everybody knows, everybody's ever played basketball knows that it's very difficult. The problem with the zone defense is rebounding the basketball. It's hard to rebound from a zone. And all the switching the Jazz are doing and kind of laying off guys so they can switch, you end up in kind of that zone situation. And the Jazz are kind of playing a matchup zone at times too. And that makes defensive rebounding difficult. Now, the Jazz had 16 offensive rebounds tonight, and Portland had 14. The Jazz need to have a bigger advantage in that rebounding number, because that's one area, playing those 3 7-footers to start especially. They need to develop Walker still. He had more offensive rebounds tonight than he had defensive rebounds. They need to have a bigger advantage in that. So, but it's a process. You don't just fix everything at once. The Jazz have a very young team. It's a process to get better. It's not, you just can't snap your fingers. The guys need to learn habits, and they need to just embrace those things and listen to the coaches, and the coaches need to teach the right things. So it's a multitude of things, but I was happy at the defense, and I think that's what turned the game. The Portland. If you just look at this number, let's just look at this really quick. Here's scoring by quarter for the Portland Trailblazers. First quarter, they score 33. Second quarter, they score 46. Third quarter, they score 38. Fourth quarter, they score 19 points. That was the key to the game, defensively.
Yeah, I like that. And honestly, you convinced me, your sell, of some of the things that I was going to say about the end of the game. But honestly, and I looked at some stats. So the comment I was going to make is 5 minutes less in the game, and they're playing offense-defense. They'd been flip in on offense, they'd been nurk in defense and like rebounding. And I'm thinking, look, on offense, what are you thinking about? They're fouling right away, which means you have to have good free throw shooters in there. We need guys that can create their own shots and hit the three-pointer, because we're trying to set ourselves up for the three-pointer. So you need like 3-point shooters in there. You also potentially need guys that can get offensive rebounds, right? If you have something come off to get another possession. So you're evaluating like all of these competing factors, like who can you put on the court of like imperfect players, and doing that. And I was thinking, okay, well, Harkless is in there offensively. When one of the times when Keontae went to the line, Harkless was in there offensively. Like that, that's interesting. Now, you said he earned it, which honestly, I completely believe in putting in there. But I also looked at his stats from the G League. Free throws, he's about, the last 2 years, 1 year was 71%, 1 year was 75%. So not stellar, but not bad either. Like respectable. Okay. But 3-point shooting, his last 2 years in G League, 42% each year. I mean, good. And rebounding, good, in the G League. So, it surprised me when I looked at his stats. I'm like, okay, this guy, not only is he tough defensively, but some of those other boxes that you think about, like that matter, like planning out, he has those too. So I think that was like really solid to put in there. And honestly, I love to see Cody get minutes. I feel bad for these guys when they don't get any minutes, and to go in there in crunch time and put him, I thought it was great. And of course, having Flip on, just because I think he does so many things, at the end was really good. And one thing, comment on Keontae, he hasn't missed a free throw yet this year. I mean, his free throws are unreal. So, obviously you can't shoot 100% for the year, but you got to give Keontae credit on that, is that whatever he did over the summer on the free throw shooting is clearly paying off, because that is huge. That you can count on that you're pretty automatic at the end, and they're not going to want to foul you and you're the guy with the ball in your hand. So that has been very impressive over 4 games, I guess now. His free throw shooting.
Yeah, I made this comment. I don't know. I made a comment online this summer that in response to something that Tony Jones says, that something about is Elijah turning into a legitimate NBA player or something like that. And I made the comment, well, he's the best perimeter defender on the team. He was the best perimeter defender even while he's playing in the G League last year. That's currently on the Jazz roster. That continues to be the case. He's clearly the best perimeter defender on the team. His problem is he needs to slow down on offense. He's just playing way too fast. He needs to slow down. But I think that'll come. So I hope they don't give up on Elijah before, hopefully we can see what transpires with that, because if he can slow his offense down to where he's playing more under control and taking better shots and all those things, I think he can certainly be a benefit to the Jazz, just because the Jazz need some perimeter defenders. And this is one of the reasons why I like Cody so much and still think that Cody needs development, because, that perimeter defense is vitally important. If you're going to be really good at some point, you have to have good perimeter defense. I mean, the best teams in the NBA have good perimeter defense. The teams that struggle in the playoffs and stuff, you look at the Lakers and whatnot with Austin Reeves and they can't and Luka, they can't defend anybody on the perimeter. You don't want that. You want to be able to play aggressive defense, hard-nosed defense, and actually be able to defend without help, especially in the playoffs.
Yeah. Defense is the most important. I honestly would rather focus on defense more than offense. As a first thing, I'd rather be known as first and foremost as a defensive team, and then go into offense. A lot like I think the coach at Houston did when he went down there. I mean, I just love that guy. He reminds me of Sloan and how tough he is, and to me that's huge. One thing that's interesting, and you're not, I think you don't think you're as bullish on him as I am. But the one guy that could solve our defensive rebounding problems is our friend Shibwe. I mean, that guy is a rebounding machine, both offensively and defensively. And I hope he worked on his offensive game over the summer, because that's the guy. You're saying you hope they don't give up on Harkless. I hope they don't give up on Shibwe, because I would really like to see him round out his game that he could be at the NBA level, because his rebounding skills are so elite and his hustle is so elite that I just would like to see that happen. I'm gonna pull some stats on Walker. I don't have them now, but I'm gonna pull some stats on Walker because I'm really curious on, looking at what his total rebounding number is in the NBA standings, looking at his offensive rebounding number per game, and then defensive rebounding number. My hypothesis, without looking at it, is that offensively he's going to be 1 or 2 in the league. Defensively he's going to be far down the pack. And as you said, he's still a great rebounder. Offensive rebounds are harder to find than defensive rebounders, but I think you have to balance it out, right, and try to get even more defensive rebounds. And I'm just very curious. Maybe next game or the game after that, I'll have the data. We can take a look at that.
Yeah, and I think to improve the defensive rebounding numbers, the percentages and everything, there has to be a focus from the coaching staff too, to try and get the guys to actually locate people with their eyes and then box those guys out. And right now the Jazz really aren't doing that, and that really hasn't been a focus of the team the past 3 years, at least, from a visual perspective, just watching the games, it hasn't been really a focus. So they have to tighten that up. That's one of the areas that they need to tighten up. But again, like I said, this is a process. There are no quick fixes. You can't snap your fingers and fix all these challenges immediately. It takes time, especially with such a young roster. And the Jazz, The Jazz have one of the youngest rosters in the league. They have a few veteran players, who kind of steady the ship, so to speak. Lauri scores 31 points tonight, another really good game, high efficiency, 10 of 19 from the field. Again, a terrific game by Lauri, just like last year. And he's on pace to certainly make another All-Star game. I mean, his numbers are absolutely terrific. And we've seen some real big stat inflation so far in this young season. I mean, I think a lot of us looked at those last year's playoffs and really liked the physicality of it and everything. But boy, the league has really reverted back to not just how last regular season was played, but even a more soft version of that, where they're just putting these guys. I mean, Austin Reeves shot like 20 free throws in a game. There are all these guys
24.
shooting just massive free throw numbers, and the scoring is quite frankly, it's out of control. And a lot of it goes back to the way they're officiating it and the way they're calling fouls, and people are being called for all these touch fouls where people are, Shea goes in there and leans into a guy, and he comes out of it like he's being shot with a 50 caliber gun and flails and everything, goes shoots a bunch of free throws. Once the playoffs come around, it's going to revert back to the other direction almost assuredly. And that's where you have to be able to, not just rely on the touch fouls to get to the free throw line. You got to really execute on offense too. But again, it's a learning process. It's a long season, and you get better over time. And the Jazz have a lot of things to work on, so it's just a process.
Yeah, it's interesting on the free throw shooting and the change in officiating between, a couple of years ago, they changed the officiating right in the middle of the season, right? Where, a lot of people are getting to the line. They said, we're scoring too much. And so they reversed to the middle of the season. It's really hard for players to adjust to that. Now, I don't know which is better, no fouls or fouls. I think there's different perspectives on both of those, but it is interesting that the NBA does change the officiating come the playoffs like every year. And it's hard for some of the players to adapt. And the game that you saw, I was listening to the Sacramento Kings. It was against the Sacramento Kings. The Lakers won in Sacramento after we had, lost in Sacramento. They'd won their first game. And Austin Reeves had 24 free throws. Now, I admittedly did not watch the game to know was he fouled or not fouled, but clearly the Sacramento Kings were not happy with it. I think Austin Reeves shot more free throws than and the whole team of Sacramento did. And you don't think of, there are players that their whole game is getting fouled. Adrian Dantley, there's these group of players. I don't think Austin Reeves is one of those players. So it is very curious that, he had the 24 free throws. And I guess I said I don't know which way I come down. I'd actually come down on, I would prefer, no one's favorite part of the game is watching free, foul shots. And so I guess I would rather, go to the, I would favor the strategy of fewer free throws taken and fewer fouls called, just because I guess that, in my opinion, that's better for the game.
Yeah, from a watchability perspective, it's certainly better. I mean, the Jazz shot 49 free throws in a game without an overtime tonight. 49.
Wow.
That's a lot of free throw attempts in a non-overtime game, in any game, especially a non-overtime game. So yeah, it's this is something that the Jazz don't have control over. Something that no team has control over, but hopefully the owners can put pressure on the league to try and get this under control, because there are way too many free throws being shot right now, league wide. It's not just one team or another; it's league wide. It's kind of out of control.
Yeah.
But well, do you? That's all I really have for tonight. I mean, I think that we. I don't really want to look over the box score. I mean, I think there were some fine performances from especially Lauri and Walker had really good field goal percentages. Keontae, the 15 for 15 from the free throw line, really impressive. The Jazz did have a lot of turnovers tonight again, and that's that leads to those fast break runouts, and that's a problem. But again, there are no quick fixes to any of these issues, and another positive for tonight before we get off. Ace finally had some shots where he looked like he had some legs under him. He made 3 mid-range jumpers in a row. Fluid. He looked really good doing it. I was watching the Portland feed. Their announcers were really impressed with the way he shot with the way he shot those 3 mid-range jumpers. So let's look for more of that, because that is certainly another positive that we can take, and hopefully the Ace is kind of getting back into the flow of things, and we can utilize his unique set of skills more so than we have to this point in the regular season.
Yeah, and I have 2 points to finish up with. One, I love watching Drew Holiday play basketball. 10 for 16, 3 for 8, 4 for 4 from the free throw line, 5 rebounds, 8 assists. Great defensive player. First round, I think 19th pick. Just a great basketball player. Great basketball family, and it's a privilege to see him play. It's really interesting, the Boston strategy, that I think they're going for a top draft pick this year. So they trade away Porzingis, and we can get into because Golden State did that, the year that they had injuries and got the second pick, they kind of struck out because they got Wiseman. But I think that's what Boston's doing this year. Mac, they may be challenging us for a record, but Drew Holiday is just a professional, great basketball player. And then the last point is just a brief story. I met somebody in the city today, a client of mine I'd never met, 2 young guys that are raising an investment fund, small fund. And one of the guys was from Spain, lives part-time in Argentina, and he's the guy I met. I walked in, I met him. He, I look up, he's 6'5", and I'm like, hey, you hoop? And he goes, yeah. And so the first 20 minutes, all we did is talk about basketball. He said, oh, Simone used to play for Spain, and I'd oh yeah, Simone's the greatest, and people don't realize he was a great defensive player. He was so good for us, and I feel bad for what's happened to him. And then Raul Nueto, we talked about him, and it was really great. And he made this comment at the end that, and what I'll leave with you, is he said, he goes, basketball is a great connector. He said, I came to the United States. I didn't speak any English, but I could still go out there and play and communicate, etc., through the basketball game. And you and I probably have very little in common, but we just sat down and had a fantastic, energetic conversation for 20 minutes about basketball, which is both our love, and it was great. And honestly, we talk about this, at the end of the day, I'm going to go back to work now after doing this. But, the reality is basketball is such a fun sport, and we should be just so thankful that we have this sport to pull us all together, because it is just great. And I there's nothing I enjoy more than talking about basketball.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's been a lifetime passion of mine. I've played all over the place, all over the United States, on different various courts. I've played on the Miami Heat practice court in Miami. I mean, it's been a love of mine my entire life, growing up on, in the backyard shooting baskets and spending an inordinate amount of time shooting baskets by myself, whether it's out in the driveway in a blizzard at 10 o'clock at night in the middle of winter with gloves on, or, just trying to step up to the free throw line until, you work on it until you can easily string together 100 in a row and all that stuff that I used to be able to do. But yeah, I mean, a lot of my friends over the years have certainly come through the game of basketball, and it's been a hugely positive influence on both of our lives for sure.
Yeah, and it doesn't really matter what level you are. Honestly, there's this game for whatever level of play you are. The NBA players that are at elite level, the G League players and Euro basketball that honestly, elite level too. These are unbelievably good basketball players. Mm-hmm. College players that are still good. High school players that are, a step down. But it's a game for everybody. And it just, including the WNBA, Caitlin Clark. I love watching Caitlin Clark, right? It's really fun. So I just thought I would share that because it kind of made my day, honestly. a meeting that like, okay, I got to go do this. It's, part of my job, but really made my day to talk basketball with somebody that, I connected with and just had the same passion for it.
Yeah, I mean, and you've been fortunate too with big, you have contact with some of those Bay Area guys like Steph and whatever, here and there. So I mean, that's a kind of a unique position to be in that not everybody has. So yeah, but basketball's a fantastic game for sure. But anyway, I think we're going to call it a night. And please, for those watching on YouTube, you can like, share, and subscribe. And you can also follow us on X at JazzSmack. And we will talk to everybody later.